Hello everybody and welcome to another Top 5 board gaming video. Today's topic is all about novel-based board games. Now I don't mean novel as in new, but novel as in a book. And essentially I've talked a lot about intellectual property being turned into board games, whether it's TV shows, movies, video games, books, or any number of other things. The nice thing about these types of games is that they do have great potential to be wonderful. You've got great characters, lore, awesome potential for storytelling, all sorts of stuff like that. A lot of times we just see a sort of cash-in with things like Monopoly this, Monopoly that, and just a reskinning of different things and that sort of thing. But there are some games that are built specifically to fit the IP, and so that's what we're going into. That said, I do have a few caveats that I want to get out of the way. First and foremost is that we are talking about fictional novels. There are plenty of non-fiction novels that talk about real-life events and board games that can accompany those, although there's not necessarily a one-to-one ratio. But think about, for example, all of the war games out there about World War II. Lots of books, lots of board games, not talking about that kind of stuff. Secondly, the board games that I'm going to be talking about share the moniker of the novel on which they are based. So that is to say, my father's work, for example, very clearly has heavy influences from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but it is not Frankenstein the board game. And so much as I love my father's work as a game, it doesn't really fit in. By the same token, we're talking about sort of standard chapter-style novels and not graphic novels. So as another example, A Study in Emerald by Neil Gaiman, one of my favorite graphic novels and also one of my favorite board games, doesn't make the cut for this particular purpose. So even so, we still have a massive world out there with a lot of games to pick from, and I picked my personal favorites based off of the storytelling, the lore, the trueness to the characters and the setting and all of that kind of stuff. And not to mention how angry I either am or am not about seasons 7 and 8 for some specific random particular IP that shall remain unnamed. But that said, as always, I would love to hear what you all have to say. Do you like to see novels that you enjoy being turned into board games? Do you think that it's something that you dread and worry that they're going to screw up? Let me know anything and everything in the comments below, because you know I love to hear it. But that said, we're going to dive right in with my number 5. At number 5, I've got Dune Imperium, and don't worry, I hear what you're saying. Danny, you're wearing a Dune shirt. How is it that Dune can be so far at the bottom? Well, there's a couple reasons. First off, I love this shirt. It's my favorite novel-based shirt that I have on hand easily. And secondly, I'm rereading the book because it's really awesome and very complicated. And third, because the movie came out not super long ago. But that said, Dune Imperium does a good job of taking everything that is in the novels of Dune and all of the political intrigue and ridiculous backstabbing and everything that happens and putting it into a game. The problem is that everything is so complex in the novels that it's impossible for any single game or movie or TV series or anything to really capture what happens in a good way. And so I think that this does a good job of doing that, and that's why it's on the list at all, but lower on the list because there's just so much more meat to it. I had to put it here, and honestly, it was between this and Game of Thrones, and I'm still mad at the TV show. So, that said, Dune Imperium is my number 5. At number 4, I've got Robinson Crusoe. This is a nice game because it recently came out with a second edition that is much easier to play because this one famously has a horribly done rulebook. That said, it is a good, well-done cooperative game where the idea is that you're stranded on a desert island and trying to survive, which is what Robinson Crusoe is all about. So it's an interesting take on the novel. The thing is that you're not necessarily doing things that happened inside the novel. It's more about a scenario-driven piece, and you do have some of the things and you do see that type of, okay, yes, I understand that I would need to do this, that, and the other. And so it works by and large. And again, I like it. I think it's a good game. I think it's well done, but especially if you don't have the second edition, it can be hard to play and may not quite fit that the novel feel that you might want to have. Robinson Crusoe, my number 4. At number 3, I've got Fury of Dracula. This is a tough one because I absolutely adore this game. I love the asymmetry of playing as the hunters versus Dracula, and I love that you really do have that distinctive Bram Stoker feel of the fear of traveling at night, and are you going to run into Dracula and all of that sort of thing, and you have the actual characters from the novel and all of this stuff. The problem is that this is one of those things that has been done to death. We've seen so many TV shows and movie adaptations and republishings and reiterations of the novels, not to mention just ridiculousness happening to vampires in general. It's really unfortunate, but Fury of Dracula itself, I think, does a good job of having the Bram Stoker feel. I think that it does a good job of having that idea of the cooperation amongst the hunters trying to track him down, and it's just all in all well done. But with all of that, Fury of Dracula, my number 3. At number 2, I've got War of the Ring. Now, of course, J.R.R. Tolkien's masterpiece of the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion and the Hobbit and the entire world of Middle-earth is unquestionably awesome, even regardless of what he did to C.S. Lewis. But that's beside the point. The thing with this is, like with Dracula and a bunch of other games, War of the Ring is one of those that has a lot of iterations. You can find a ton of games based off of Lord of the Rings, but this is my personal favorite. I think this does the best when it comes to capturing the feeling of the original trilogy. I think that it's a lot of fun in terms of the asymmetry that you have with the teams, of having the Fellowship, the Hobbits, and the bad guys, and trying to balance everything out and trying to sneak around, and it just feels right. And the fact that the movies were so good and reasonably close to the novels, and playing this game kind of makes it feel like you're playing through the movies, really helps in my personal opinion, which kind of bumps it up for me. So all in all, War of the Ring is my number 2. At number 1, I've got Arkham Horror because, as you all know, I love to say this is based off of the Cthulhu mythos, whatever it is. I believe technically it's mythos. But regardless, again, there are a ton of games about the Cthulhu mythos. That is, we've got Eldritch Horror, we've got Arkham Horror, the card game, we've got the Study in Emerald that I mentioned before, and that's part of why that this is my number 1. Not only do you have that really wonderful feeling of being in this absolutely horrific adventure involving the elder gods and them potentially awaking and destroying the entire planet, but it does a good job of getting all of the characters involved. It does a good job of having that horror element to it and having the relative subtleties that the original books have, and I absolutely adore that. I think it's wonderful. I don't have any of the expansions to Arkham Horror, not to mention there is a new edition, the Arkham Horror 3rd edition. This is the second one, but between this and A Study in Emerald with the graphic novel, Eldritch Horror, and all of that kind of stuff, I think that Fantasy Flight has really done a great job of adapting the novels to the board game form. Arkham Horror is my number 1. Well, everybody, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video on my top 5 favorite games based off of fictional novels. Now, again, this is a pretty huge area and obviously very, very, very subjective. It may be a novel that you don't like, but a board game that you really do. It may be a board game that you really hate, but a novel you really like. Or it may have been destroyed by a TV show during seasons 7 and 8. Looking at you, Game of Thrones, there you are. That said, there's a lot of wiggle room with this, and of course I'm curious what you all have to say. So many of these things tend to be cash-ins where you see Monopoly this, Monopoly that, and you see slight variations on whatever and all this kind of thing that are just boring and badly done. But these games, I think, were done very, very well. I do believe that there are others that have been done very well, and of course you can move on to not only non-fiction books, but also things like comic books and the graphic novels, like I said, where you've got your Walking Dead and all of those sorts of things too. But that said, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at my various social media pages where you can interact with myself and my channel in a bunch of fun ways. Put anything and everything in the comments below as to what you think. But with that, thank you once again for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.